Hi guys, welcome to my channel Soil and Margaritas. My name is Roxana and I garden in Zone 5 in Central Indiana. And I'm finally able to sit down and talk to you about my hydrangeas. You guys have been asking me questions about fertilizer, pruning, how far are they apart, when did I plant them, how big were they, what is the maintenance on them, and all of that. And I do have a few videos on my channel where I explain a lot of these things. Even in a few of them, I have been showing you how I prune them. But I figured I just want to make just one single video where I cover everything, because a lot of you guys watching are new to my channel and have like no idea about my hydrangea hedge. And I just want to make sure that I answer most of your questions. So I have my list. Of points that I want to talk about. And hopefully if you guys have any questions, if I don't get to cover them in this video, just let me know in the comments. And if you do have any questions, check the comments, because more than likely I will answer those questions below. So let's start from the beginning. In 2016, we were somewhat new to this property. This is a very small suburban home. I don't have a lot of space, but I did want some sort of privacy, some sort of division between my neighbors and my property. I wanted something that was natural. I didn't necessarily want something that was evergreen, but I did want some sort of bloom, some sort of color from these plants, from this hedge. And after doing some research, I figured out that I wanted a hydrangea. It was the easiest, more convenient, somewhat maintenance-free plant that I wanted to get, but also the blooms that I wanted to get from them. And I purchased 5 very large shrubs at my local nursery, and the hydrangea that I got were paniculata limelight hydrangeas, which are a classic. The plants were already huge. I did not start with small containers. I went huge. It was a little bit of an investment at the beginning. The containers were almost 7-gallon containers, and I was barely able to move them myself. And like I said, I wanted to start with something huge already, because I didn't want to have to wait years and years for the plants to be huge. And that was my reasoning for getting big plants anyway. I planted the hydrangeas about 4 feet away from the center of each other. The area where I planted this was not treated previously. It was just full of grass. There was not a single plant in this property that it was planted here. It was just full of grass. So I didn't do anything to that area where I planted the hydrangeas. All I did was I removed the grass and I added a little bit of fertilizer to the holes to each hydrangea where I was going to plant them. During the first year where the hydrangeas were there, I just watered them manually. I gave them water here and there just to make sure that the plants have enough time and enough energy to get established. I did not install any type of irrigation. It was just all done manually. My hydrangea hedge in this spot in my garden get full sun from the morning all the way until the evening. And these type of hydrangeas, the paniculata limelight hydrangeas, handle the sun really well here in Central Indiana. Now, I am not going to say that that's the same case for where you live. And if you do have any questions about limelights handling the type of sun of where you live, my advice for you will be to check your local garden center and ask them specifically if this type of hydrangea will do well in your zone. Pruning is going to depend entirely on the area where you have them and the kind of look that you want to get from them during the winter. And I say this because I know that a lot of people have this type of hydrangea and they never prune them. They only remove the dead blooms and they just let the plant be. But these kind of people have the space for these plants. They have a huge property. They have acres of land where they can just plant these plants and they don't have to worry about anything. I don't have the luxury of having a large property where I can just let the plants be. I have to somewhat control these plants because they will just get huge. These plants, the regular limelight hydrangeas, get huge. I'm talking about 10 feet tall and 10 feet wide. So for me, I choose to prune them early in the spring, but you could also prune them late in the fall. And the reason why I choose to let the plants be with brown blooms, with skinny leafless branches during the winter is because I love the look of snow on them during the winter. Instead of having just sticks there on that side of the garden, just covered in snow or semi-covered in the snow, I choose to have the blooms covered with them because I personally enjoy that look. But if you don't care about that, if you have them in an area where you really where it really doesn't matter for you, then you can do this late in the fall if you have the time, or you can really do them early in the spring. The time where I prune them is around the end of March. As soon as I see a little bit of growth happening on the branches, I go and I prune them hard. I have shown you a couple of times the type of pruning that I do, and I know that some of you get shocked by how much I get away from the plants, but these plants do grow. Sometimes you can get about 4 feet of growth in just in one season. And if you imagine, if your plant is already about 5 feet tall, if you get 4 feet of growth, then it's just going to get really, really tall. While I do want some privacy on that side of the garden, I also want to be able to cut the blooms to enjoy the blooms. And if they're really, really tall, then I don't get to do that. So I just go really, really heavy, and these plants do handle that well. As far as fertilizer goes, I give them fertilizer for sure once a year. If I am able, twice a year. And I choose to say this because sometimes I can be forgetful, especially during the summer where things are happening and I don't actually remember to give them fertilizer. But for sure, once in the spring, sometime after pruning, sometimes before they start showing the leaves, I give them a well-balanced fertilizer, something with the same numbers for the NPK. Find something that you like. I either choose something from Spoma or from Dr. Earth or anything that I can find available, really. I'm not super picky about the type of fertilizer or the company that makes a fertilizer. I am more concerned about what type of fertilizer I give them. Something general, I just give them that once in the spring. And if I can remember, and if I am really well organized, they will get something towards the middle of summer, which will be something in a liquid form, or again, the same fertilizer that I use in the spring. And when I first started with my Hydrangea Hedge, I used to do just once in the spring, the fertilizer once in the spring. But I noticed that sometime in the middle of summer, the leaves will start turning a little bit yellowish, like they were lacking some sort of nutrients. So after noticing that, I started just giving the fertilizer sometime in the middle of summer, like July, August, and they just did fine after that. Irrigation was not something that was on my radar for my entire garden. It wasn't until this year, 2023, where I decided that one of my goals was to get most of my garden on some sort of irrigation system, and that's what I actually have been doing the last couple of weeks. But as far as my hydrangeas, I have not had any irrigation or any type of watering system on them. The first year when I brought the plants in, I just gave them water every couple of days just to make sure they were established. But after that, it really didn't matter to me when they got water. If we had a summer where it was really, really hot and I noticed they were struggling, I will go and give them water, but I didn't have anything automatically going on. Last year, I decided to put irrigation on that side of the bed, and my hydrangeas were getting water starting in the summer. They were getting water on a weekly basis. I think twice a week I was giving them water. Well, that was a plus. Well, that was a good thing for them. It also was too good for them. Let me explain. I never had problems with my hydrangeas with my blooms flopping all over the place. And yes, the blooms are heavy, but the way that I prune them and the way that these hydrangeas, how big they are and how thick the stems are, they handle the weight of the blooms well. But last year, when I had my irrigation system on in 2022, I think that with the extra water that they were getting, they just grew a little bit too much, bigger than most years. And that made for heavier, weaker branches. I am not entirely positive on this, but last year I had a huge problem with most of my blooms on my hydrangeas flopping, and it was a mess. I really had to go in there and use some sort of string to attach one side of the blooms to the other side just to make them look decent. At the beginning of this year, I removed all of that irrigation from that side of the hydrangeas, and I just left one light to get the water from the other side. But I decided not to do any irrigation of the hydrangeas. If it gets really hot, then I will go and give them water myself. but I don't have anything going on as far as irrigation. Depending where you live, depending in the area where you have your hydrangeas, you might need this. Again, check with your local garden center to see if that's doable for your son. A lot of you guys comment if these hydrangeas are standard hydrangeas. They are not standard hydrangeas. They are regular shrubs with multi-stems, just like a normal plant that you will get at your local garden center. These are regular round shrubs that I have been shaping each year because I personally like the clean bottoms with the blooms only happening on top of the plants. And I do this by coming sometime later in the spring and early in the summer and removing the bottom branches where I want them removed. And this allows me to have airflow, allows me to have clean tree shape like shrubs. And it's doable. If you want to do that, all you have to do is just remove the bottom branches. That's what I do anyway, at least 2 or 3 times a year. And it's easy to do. I don't have to wait until the plants are huge to remove the shrubs, to remove the branches, the lower branches. As soon as I see anything growth happening where I don't want the growth happening, I just remove those and it works for me. I added a bunch of coral bells or heucheras on that bottom part of the bed. It's a tricky part because once the hydrangeas have leaves all over the branches, they really shade everything underneath them. And this is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing because it limits me with the type of plants that I can put there. Anything that I will need full sun will not do well underneath them because they will just be locking the sun. But I chose to have heucheras there because they can handle the shade and they can handle a little bit of the sun, at least the darker ones, in my opinion. And they work well there together. I am thinking that this year I want to add something else. I want to push my luck and see if I can get something with a little bit more color. But honestly, everything is looking amazing as it is, and I am not really going to push anything else after this. If I find the right plant in the quantities that I want, I might add something in between the heucheras. But right now, I just love the look of the clean bottoms of the hydrangeas with the heucheras at the bottom. As far as the hydrangea hedge and being attacked by some sort of pest, I really don't have any problems with it. The blooms, the hydrangeas, when they're in full bloom, they are covered with pollinators. Butterfly, wasps, bees, mosquitoes, flies, anything you can think of, they are there. So if you're looking for something that blooms, that it handles the sun, and that is hardy in your sun, that is really hardy, that brings pollinators to your garden, you are going to love limelight hydrangeas. And in my opinion, these hydrangeas are one of the best out there. It's just a classic hydrangea. And the blooms can be dry. They dry really, really well. I have done this for a few years. The blooms look amazing when they're dry. And also by some mistakes that I have made before when cutting the branches in the spring and using those branches for something else, I have realized that they are really, really easy to propagate by cutting. So if you want to do something like that, if that's your thing, then definitely look into limelight hydrangeas. Now, some of you have asked, if you could do it all over again, will you use the same hydrangeas? Will you do something different? The only thing that I will do different is that I will start with smaller plants. And I only say this because while they do take a little bit of time to get huge, they do really grow quite quickly. And if I don't prune them for a couple of years, if I just let them be, they're just going to get huge really quickly. And yes, I wanted an instant gratification. I really wanted some sort of instant hedge there, already huge, already big. I didn't want to wait a few years before doing that. But honestly, I think if I was in the position to do it all over the games, I will start with 1-gallon containers. I will not spend the extra money on getting the plants already that big like I did. I love my hydrangea hedge. I know that I say this all the time whenever I show you guys my blooms. I just love how easy they are to grow. I just love how somewhat maintenance free they are, and they are very hardy, you guys. We had some crazy temperatures in the winter last year, and I was really worried that I was going to lose a plant or two of that hedge, because if I did, it was going to be really hard for me to replace it, at least in the size that they are. And it was just, I just worry a little bit too much about those plants. And the plants look like nothing happened. So I am very, very happy where they are. I love the look that they give me during the summer. And even in the fall and during the winter when they are covered in snow, I just love how by simply putting a few plants together of the same variety, you can just get that look, and it's just, in my opinion, it just looks amazing. So I hope that this answers most of your questions when it comes to my hydrangeas. Again, if you have any questions, if I didn't cover them in this video, let me know in the comments below. And hopefully if you are thinking about starting your own hydrangea hedge, then this video gave you a little bit of extra information. Thank you for being here, you guys, and until the next time.